A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. So I have been looking at all my photos from in the past just to see if I could just come up with an idea for a video, to be honest. And then I just thought, actually I've come on quite a bit in my photography. I know that's a bit of a bold statement to make, but I've definitely improved, there's no doubt about it. So I thought, if I looked at my photos, would I be able to see how I improved, why I improved? Were there little moments that I could trigger where I could share those ideas and things that I learned going right back to the very beginning that would help you guys out? So I'm going to start with my black and white prints. So I first started photography in the dark room at my mum and dad's house when I was about 14, something like that, in the 80s, long time ago. And I did black and white prints, and I did actually quite well with some of these. But looking at them now, I don't know how. But they're not bad, but I wanted to tell you about these, and I'm just going to go through some other photos as well and give you some tips for how I improved and those sort of light bulb moments, I suppose. Okay, so these are my photos from my dark room in the early years. Sort of, I first started an exposure guidebook. So this book here. So this was an exposure guidebook, and you can see that I wrote down Grasmere Island, which I think was this shot here, and you know, I said F number 8. This was the enlarger. You know, what was the F number on the enlarger? What exposure was it? What height did they have the enlarger, etc. And yeah, you can see that this was a reasonable shot. This was my favourite shot that I took for a few years, really, and I think it had a bit of atmosphere. I probably could have done it with a little bit more contrast, but I actually think this was a pretty good shot. This is another one that I took in the early 90s, and I remember taking this, believe it or not, and I remember thinking these raindrops were nice on here, but I think this is okay as a shot, but it falls down in a number of areas. I think it's got lots of things going on in the shot. You know, I've got these bushes behind, I've got this fence, I've got the grass down here, the wall, these ferns coming out, and then the sky as well. And I think what I should have done is maybe just concentrated on a certain element in there, and also the balance isn't great. But generally, that was quite good. I feel like because I was doing black and white, I was trying to look for texture and contrasts, and that's something that I got quite good at doing from a black and white perspective. This is a good example here. When I first went to Yosemite, so this is with Anne, who's my wife now. We went here before we were married. I think it was in about 1994, something like that, maybe 95. And I took this shot with a long lens, with Fuji FP4 film, I think. And yeah, I mean, I was quite pleased with this. I think from a contrast point of view, a simplicity point of view, that was good. But when I got onto woodland shots like this one, not so good. So you can see that, I'll just move these out of the way. You can see that this shot was, you know, there's just so much going on. I don't think it's actually in focus at the front here, but it is at the back. So I probably had quite a long lens on, didn't really know where to focus. And I saw this light coming through and thought, oh, that'll be good. And just took the scene rather than composed the scene. And I think there was a lot of shots like that. This is another example of that. I mean, it's turned out to be not a bad shot, this, but you can see that, you know, what I'm doing here is taking the scene. You know, I've seen this river, I've seen these snow-capped mountains, and I'm not trying to tweak it. So what I should have done is move around a little bit and have some balance to this scene. Having said that, I took a almost identical shot to this recently, which I didn't realise, of the same scene, and I did improve it. I did get the composition a little bit better, so I think I've definitely improved in that aspect. I also took some slide films, so these are my slide films, but that was few and far between. It was far too expensive to do. I did a bit of colour developing, but I really struggled with colour at the time because I felt like I was better at just finding textures and shapes and things like that. Anyway, come 2002, and I got myself a Nikon D100 camera, and I thought, this is amazing. It was one of the first digital cameras you could get. I'd had a previous one to that, which was a Canon, just point and shoot, in 2000 when I went to the Sydney Olympics, but I think it was 2 megapixels. This was the D100, and it was 6 megapixels, and that was super excited. So I got out a little bit more having this new camera, and I started to shoot more landscapes. But as you can see by these shots, I really struggled. I was shooting colour a lot more for the first time. And I think the problem was that I was seeing these scenes and just seeing it as a scene rather than the elements within the scene and how I could build those elements up. So I was taking shots, not really in great light either, of just hills and mountains like these shots here that didn't really add up to anything that was, you know, that there was any thought gone into it, I suppose. You know, there wasn't a story, or there wasn't a way of leading your eye around. There was occasional successes like this shot here of these skiers where I was shooting with a long lens, but it tended to be more with my long lens where I could just simplify the scene. And I've said that a lot. You know, if you are struggling with composition, then get a long lens, because you know that's a much easier way of just trying to find a little part of that scene in front of you and composing that, rather than trying to fit everything into a wide angle lens, which is a little bit more difficult. But I sort of like using my wide angle lens. I still did texture as well, and I still couldn't get away from the texture that I was shooting. But you know, what I was finding is that a shot that looked brilliant in black and white, and I could see it look brilliant in black and white, I couldn't quite understand why it didn't look so good in colour. Like this shot here of this corn or wheat. What is it? Somebody will know. Comments below. Anyway, it looked great in black and white. It didn't look so good in colour. I was seeing in black and white, and I couldn't get that out of my head. And then the other problem I had with colour in the earlier days of shooting it and then doing all my edits in Photoshop is, although I knew Photoshop quite well, I'd used it for doing all sorts of other things, I felt like I was struggling to understand how to edit a photo. You know, I'd done things again in black and white in the dark room where I was good at controlling contrast and dodging and burning, but I couldn't quite get it right. And I made the mistake looking at this shot here. This was a shot that I was really proud of at the time, but I can look back at it now and I can see the sky is just way too over darkened, and it's brought in these colours in the sky which aren't realistic. And to me, that was a really good shot at the time because it seemed dramatic. But you know, I was failing to connect with the mood of the scene, I think, and trying to visualize what I wanted when I took that image. And if somebody had told me that, I don't think it would have helped either, because it was just difficult. I was really struggling to understand not just how to shoot something and how to edit it, but what I wanted to shoot. So I was trying to shoot all sorts of different things. Then I went to Iceland, and I did a tour of Iceland for 2 weeks in 2004. And this was amazing. Iceland was so quiet there. There was like gravel tracks, and it wasn't tarmac all the way. And I got some good shots. This was Gullfoss, but again, it was just drab light. I didn't go to one place again and again in better light, or think, oh, I should go there at sunset or sunrise. And again, I did better with my black and white shots like this image here. And then we had kids. So that was tricky because we had kids, but I thought I'll photograph my kids. So I took lots of photos like this one here of Sam being scared by a bug. I did quite a lot of comedy photos of my kids, which was quite good fun, and everyone liked them, but it didn't really improve my landscape photography. So there was a period where I went through not much improvement. I'm sure everyone's done that as well. You take pictures of your kids and the things around you rather than going out afar. I did go out in the autumn and shoot because that seemed like the best time. And I got shots like this, which I was really pleased of. And again, I seem to have more success when I was shooting longer, not having foregrounds. I've over edited this again though. You know, I struggled with it. I should have had a more softly look to this autumn scene here, rather than, you know, just increasing the contrast and saturation, which is what I tended to do at the time. What I should have tried to do is just soften it down a little bit. And again, you know, on this shot here, it was beautiful reflections. I think this was Rydal Water in the Lake District, and I got there a lot, and I remember thinking this is just beautiful. It was a nice colour palette, but again, your eye doesn't really know where to go on the shot. You don't really know whether to, look at the trees in a bunch on the left or the bunch on the right. So although it's sort of balanced, it's not great. Your eye doesn't know where to go. Whereas, if I look at a shot now where I'm using reflections, I feel like the more thought about, I'm thinking about the elements within the shot. The reflection is just part of the whole elements that go together to make that final image. So in 2005, I went back to Iceland, and I feel like I got a little bit better then. I started to think more about light. This was a really good example. So this was these lupins in Iceland on the Snaefellsnes Peninsula. We went there in the day to sort of scout it out, and then I went back at midnight because we went in the summer and got this shot, and that was really good. But it was the first time where I thought, actually, my camera isn't quite good enough. So the dynamic range was really struggling on the camera. I did use ND grad filters. I don't think I had one on this particular shot, and I started to burn out the clouds a little bit. But I started to shoot foregrounds, and that got me excited. Those foregrounds were really, really interesting. These lupins were amazing. And I thought, that's the sort of photography that I really like. And this shot from 2005 is probably the first shot that I've taken where I thought, that's what I want to shoot. And then the revolution was 2015. I got a Nikon D200. And it's the first time that I think technology helped me. And it helped me in two ways. It helped me because it gave me an impetus to go out and shoot more. It was 12 megapixels. And that made such a big change to the quality of my photos, going from that 6 to 12 megapixels. I think 12's enough, 6 not quite enough. Anything above 12's a bonus. But that 12 megapixels, and the bigger dynamic range on that sensor was just amazing. So that was good. And I had this impetus to get out, and I took this shot, Suntree, and this won quite a lot of awards online. It did well in lots of competitions, and I felt like I'd just done something quite special. Again, it was taken away with my long lens, but I went out to take this shot, and I purposely had been past it a lot of time. I thought about it in my head. How can I get this shot? So it was a purpose-built shot, and that was a massive step change in my photography. So everything came together. And then things sort of went downhill because I had 3 kids, and I didn't shoot as many landscapes, but I felt like even shooting my kids, I was starting to think more about composition, lighting, and how things were working. And and things got a lot better then with my photography. I started shooting Mamtor in the Peak District. This was the first shot I took of it, and then I think I started thinking about light and foreground and drama, with the mist, and when could I go back there to get the best conditions? Okay, these shots aren't the best, but I was starting to think about the right things, and failing more at doing one scene. And eventually I got this shot from Mamtor, which I absolutely love, closer to now. So that was great. Those things were fantastic. The final thing that I just want to say before I go on to the sort of latter days of my photography was I had another trip to Scotland. I think it was in about 2011, something like that. And I distinctly remember shooting and thinking, what's going wrong with these shots? And I shot these shots, and I was trying to get this foreground, and I just couldn't work it out. And I just thought, I know what, I'm going to forget trying to do these big vista foreground shots. And I just got my long lens, which I felt more comfortable with, and I just tried to hone that. And I came back with this shot, which I really liked. I thought it was really good. Thinking about it now, I think I'd crop it into a portrait rather than a landscape. But it was a really good shot. And then I went on over the next couple of years to take these 2 shots, which again were long lenses, and then finally this other shot, which was one of my favourites, of these trees with a long lens. And I felt like I was good at picking out detail and composition within the landscape that was further away from me. But I knew deep down what I wanted to do was shoot these big vistas, and I knew to do that I had to get these foregrounds. Now, I'd seen a lot of Joe Cornish's work, who's a landscape photographer in the UK, and he was really good at that. So I started to study his books, and I thought, I'm going to crack this. And in about 2014, I started taking more foregrounds, and I thought I could really crack this. So I started taking bigger vistas, wider angle shots. So this one is of Yosemite Valley when I used to live in California, about 4 or 5 years ago. I thought I've got to up my game. You know, I've got to get better at shooting these foregrounds. So I was quite good at shooting long lens shots, but not as good as I wanted to be at shooting foregrounds. So I just went out and shot a lot of foregrounds. This was one from Gummer's How, which was one of the early ones. I actually did a video really early on about it. You can go and have a look at it. But I feel that this foreground, this tree, tells a story of the mountain. So, you know, you can tell that on this mountain it's windy. This tree is windswept. But then you can look at the tree and then you can lead in through the image. And that's fantastic. This shot here at Buttermere, I camped out here. And I remember seeing the stream leading all the way down. I thought, how can I use that as a foreground? And I just had it really dark in the foreground, but it worked fantastically well. And it was all about story and leading your eye. That's what I realized was so important with foreground. It was connecting the element from a foreground to a midground to the distance. And when I had that light bulb moment, I thought I can do anything with foregrounds. I can do all sorts of things. But it wasn't so easy and I had lots of failures. But then I realized there was things within foregrounds that could make your photo better and things that don't make your photo better. And telling that story and connecting those elements were two things that were really important. I got this one of the rainbow here and the water falling in the foreground, and you knew it was raining and it connected with the rainbow. I got one of the grasses in Scotland where the mountains in the background you know, were snow-capped, but this grass just felt to me like the valleys that I'd been driving through in Scotland. So I was sort of connecting the landscape of Scotland through that foreground, which I felt just looked really good. I was really pleased about. And that was it, you know. I've gone on to take lots more photos of foregrounds, and those big vistas are actually in my book, Vistas, handy plug. If you haven't got a copy of Vistas, then you can still get one. There's a link in the description below. But vistas are something that I'm super passionate about. Okay, I take woodlands and seascapes as well, but vistas are the thing that really captured my imagination. But it's been such a long journey to get there. I feel like it means something quite special to me. Before I go, I just want to say something about the World Landscape Photographer. Thanks for everybody that's entered. I think we've raised about £4,500 so far, so that's amazing. That means that, you know, 400 to 500 people have entered, but we can get more. So if you haven't entered, then please check out the link below. I built the website specifically for it using Squarespace, which is the sponsor of this video today. And Squarespace have been really helpful. So I set up this website and it took me about 2 hours to set up. I chose a template, which is amazing on Squarespace because there's loads of templates that are really easy to use. And then all I needed to do was just upload my photos. The hardest bit was just coming up with the text, writing the terms and conditions of the competition. And that was it. I could go live, choose a domain name, and there we go. So it's easy to do. If you're looking to do your website, then make sure you go to squarespace.com. And if you're ready to go live with it, then you can get 10% off your first year at /Nigel or use offer code Nigel. So good luck with that. Okay, that's it. I just want to ask, has anybody clicked the bell icon here? Because in my stats on YouTube, it says that only 13% of people have clicked the bell icon below. So I'd be surprised if that's right, but if it is, then make sure you click it. It's just down here somewhere, and you just click the bell icon, and when I upload another video midweek, which I will do, it'll either be on Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, you'll be the first to know, and you can go and watch it. And in the midweek video this week, I'm going to talk all about your photos that you've uploaded to the competition #2020ND on Instagram. Quite a long video today. Thanks for sticking with me, and until sometime in the week, bye.